There's a lot of things going on in the Middle East. We're talking about Iran again. We've been hearing from the news that the biggest aircraft carrier from the United States has now positioned itself and they are planning for war. That is what we're hearing all over the mainstream propaganda. Now, the question becomes, right? Because everybody is saying that it's going to happen. So now the question is, when is the US going to attack? Because one thing for sure is that it is always the US or Israel that start. Iran is not going to start unless they really feel like the US is provoking them to the point where they need to do something. They're not going to start. To understand what is going on in Iran now, we need to understand Venezuela. That is the first thing. What happened in Venezuela? Donald Trump moved all of those, aircraft carriers and all the ships, and they were doing all these different exercises around Venezuela. And then when he wasn't working, they start chasing after oil tankers, arresting them, putting pressure, talking about the airspace in Venezuela is now closed and all of that stuff. And then at the end, what did we see? We saw a small team entering Venezuela, right? Picking up Maduro and then leaving. A war did not take place. But for 4 months, we kept hearing about this war and that the US was going to bomb Venezuela. What is the US strategy with Iran? Number one thing is that it is not Donald Trump who's interested in bombing Iran. Many people need to understand that. It is Netanyahu who's putting that pressure. Netanyahu is under criminal investigation for corruption. And so he has been trying to distract his country from coming after him and removing him from power by having all these different conflicts. And that is why he's putting pressure on Iran. He believes that if he take down Iran, right, that will be the big prize and that he can use that as an argument to say, look, I've conquered, and then use some type of biblical, argument. God helped them conquer the greatest enemy of Israel or something like that. And therefore, they need to look at him as a hero and forget all his crimes. Now that we know that Israel has a big influence in the US government, and especially Donald Trump, how is the conflict going to take place? And that is the second thing that we want to look into. Donald Trump is going to want to have something quick like Venezuela. Something where they can bribe Iran's generals, people very close to the Ayatollah or the people who make major decisions, and then arrest the Ayatollah and then, take him into the US or Israel or something. And then Israel can come in there and then bomb all of the missile program, because it is no longer about Iran acquiring a nuclear weapon. No, now it's the missile program, because they learned a lot about Iran's missile program in June. Iran did major devastation in Israel. They will not recover for at least 2 decades from what Iran did to them. And so Netanyahu knows very well that in the Middle East, because Israel wants to be the most powerful nation in the Middle East, they know very well that Iran is the most powerful nation. It is the only one with hypersonic weapons, very advanced missile defense system, right? And a lot of ballistic missiles. They have hundreds of thousands of ballistic missiles. Iran has been building them ever since the war between Iraq and Iran. And it's aimed at the United States, right? Not Israel. The United States is their major target. And so this is threatening Israel, because Israel wants to be able to go all around the Middle East, bomb each country when they want to, dismantle their government, and then run whatever it is that they want to run in the Middle East. And Iran is a major obstacle for that. And so how are they going to conduct this? They cannot do the Venezuela option. They're going to try that, right? Hoping that some generals are going to give in. Of course, you always have corrupt individuals who are ready to betray their countries. You're always going to find people like that. But in this particular case, it will be extremely difficult to find one person or 2 or 3 in the Iran government who can do that. But even if you were to find 5 people, there are other people in there who will oppose very strongly. Now, the reason why they cannot go ahead and just bomb Iran is because they know Iran's response. They know that Iran has very powerful weapons that could sink those aircraft carriers that they brought close to the coast of Iran. In fact, people need to understand one thing. The very fact that the US is moving its aircraft carriers close to Iran clearly tell us that they are not going to bomb Iran. No. Because just think about it for a minute. They empty their air bases in Iraq. Same thing in Jordan. Same thing in Qatar, right? Some people are even saying that even in Saudi Arabia, they empty their airspace there. Asking the troops to leave, right? Come back to the US or go somewhere else, right? Because they know that Iran will retaliate. So if they know that, why would they now bring an aircraft carrier that has thousands of soldiers in there and then bring them close to the coast of Iran? Why would they do that? People need to think. It is all propaganda. It is a PR stunt. It is aimed at trying to scare people. This is exactly the same thing they did in Venezuela. We talked about it. We said they cannot invade Venezuela because from the moment when they try that, Venezuela will try to sink one of the ships, hoping that Venezuela has the weapons. But we know Iran has the weapons. We saw the weapons during the 12-day conflict with Israel. We know that Iran has very powerful hypersonic weapons. They can sink those aircraft carriers. I don't know how many of them that they have in there. They can sink them in a matter of 10 minutes with the hypersonic weapons that they have. They could do that. So they are emptying their bases in Qatar, Iraq, and other places, because they know that Iran is going to hit. And then just for them to bring another floating air bases close to Iran, it doesn't make any sense. So that clearly shows us that they are not going to bomb. But what they are going to do is to continue to work with some, of their traders who are inside Iran and try to see how they can get to the leadership. It will be a suicide mission if the United States decide to bomb Iran that way with their ship right there. It will be suicidal for all of them. Now, I understand that Netanyahu doesn't care. He knows that his days are numbered. He knows that justice is coming after him. And Donald Trump is vulnerable. He has been the only president who is easily manipulated by Israel, Netanyahu. And so Netanyahu does not care about the US. He doesn't care about how many US soldiers will die. He will do everything in his power to drag Donald Trump into doing this. So he wants to push Donald Trump to do something. And so Donald Trump, if he makes the mistake of saying, oh, well, we're just going to bomb something like that and then leave, Iran this time has promised that if half of, drone or something just enter the space of Iran, Iran is ready to bring an all-out war against the United States and Israel. They don't care whether Israel has nuclear weapon or not. Israel cannot use nuclear weapons. I know Netanyahu will want to use nuclear weapons, but people in Israel are going to say no, because they know that the Russians and the Chinese are in Iran, helping Iran. Using a nuclear weapon on Iran will means you're provoking Russia and China, and they in turn will respond. At the end of the day, something very important we need to understand. The biggest loser of this conflict, if it does happen, it will be the United States and Israel. The US is the one bragging to be the biggest power on earth. If you are, what are you waiting for? Why are you sitting there in the sea not attacking? Show the power that you have. The United States is the one that are saying, look, we won Iran the last time. If you did, why do you feel like you have to bomb them again now? When you won the last time fighting, you should have ended the entire thing. Why is it that Iran is still a threat? The reality is that all of this is propaganda. They know very well that this time, Iran is not going to hold back. And so they put themselves in a position where they don't know what to do. Everything is against them. The question now becomes, will the US attack Iran? My answer to this is this. This is a conflict that needs to finally take place so that we can once and for all end this entire thing. If they do decide that they are not going to attack Iran, they need to shut their mouth, once and forever and never bother people with this again. Because at the end of the day, this desperation is becoming pathetic.